Hello there and welcome to the Business Interview. I'm Marcus Carlson. Asia's developing economies and China in particular have for years been seen as an engine of global growth. But there are now fears that engine is sputtering and the Chinese economy is in the spotlight. The International Monetary Fund recently warned there is a risk of a so-called hard landing in China, a sharp slowdown in economic growth. The issue is sensitive and the IMF's assessment drew criticism from Beijing. For more on where Asian economies are heading, we can now turn to Thierry de Longmare. He's Vice President of the Asian Development Bank, where he's responsible of finance and risk management. First of all, welcome to the program. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, a lot of our viewers may not be so familiar with the Asian Development Bank. The bank has 67 members, and your number one job is basically to further development in Asia.
We have a vision. The vision of the Asian Development Bank is to end poverty in Asia and the Pacific. Interestingly, Asia, who is known for being very successful from an economic growth standpoint, has a major challenge. The challenge is that 1.7 billion Asians are still living under the poverty level of $2 per day.
And it's your job to lift them out of poverty, so to speak. That's your number one job, essentially.
The vision is to end poverty. The mission is to foster economic growth and help the developing countries of Asia develop themselves to graduate from a low-income status to a middle-income status.
Now, a lot of people, they are watching your growth forecast. If we look at Asia overall, or developing Asia, as you put it, you predict a growth rate of just over 6% in 2014. What are the risks to that? What are the threats to that growth rate in your view?
The main partners, trade partners of Asia are still developed countries from Europe, North America, and also some Asian countries like Japan, South Korea, Australia. And the pace of recovery of those countries is a risk because there is an expectation that they are recovering. What is yet to be proven is what is the pace of that recovery. So that would be number one, a risk. The second risk, and you hinted to it, is PRC, People's Republic of China. They are embarked in very ambitious reform programs, and therefore the risk is, will it be successful? What timeline will be required to have them successful, and what could be the collateral impact on other parts of the economy. The third risk is the Fed tapering and the impact of less liquidity injection from the Fed, but also other central banks like Bank of England, Bank of Japan, and that is still an unknown.
The Federal Reserve, though, it has been indicating that it's going to be continuing with the tapering, as it's been called, gradually. Do you think that's a good plan from the Federal Reserve side, and a plan that will work for Asia, so to speak, this gradual tapering?
It's a good thing that the Fed has embarked in a tapering. It's even a better thing that they have embarked in a gradual tapering, because in a way people can adjust gradually instead of a brutal type of exercise. We believe that for Asia, the tapering will not have so much of an impact because it is primarily directed to the North American market and the European markets, and most generally to the developed markets. But still, we have observed, particularly on the currency front, some depreciation of some of the Asian currencies, and that in a way was considered as a negative impact. But on the other side, on the flip side of the coin, you could consider that given that many of those economies are export-led economies, a slight reduction or slight depreciation of the currency is rather positive to maintain a good level of export growth.
So you're not too concerned there by tapering by the sounds of it. Let's turn then to China and zoom in on China. The IMF has warned of a small risk of a so-called hard landing. The Chinese and the Chinese government didn't like to hear that from the International Monetary Fund side. What do you think the risk is of a hard landing in China?
The risk is low. We are quite confident in the Chinese authorities' capacity to monitor the slowdown of the Chinese economy. And we've used that as a sign of maturing economy.
But do you think, if there is a sharp slowdown, do you think that the Chinese are ready to engage in stimulus measures?
If there is, I don't see that to happen, but It has happened in 2008, 2009. They did take stimulus measures, and they were quite successful in those measures. The foreign reserve of the People's Bank of China are huge, more than $3 trillion. And so they have capacity to fill gaps or fill weaknesses of their economy.
Now, there are fears about what's going to happen to China's so-called shadow banking sector. First of all, what is China's shadow banking sector? What does this actually stand for?
I was going to ask you the question, but yeah, there is an issue with the definition of shadow banking. I mean, most people would say that it's all the financial activities that are difficult to regulate or which are unregulated. There is a factor which is unique to China is compared to, for example, the United States. The banking sector is about 4 times bigger when you consider the amount of assets held in banks than the bond market. It's exactly the opposite in the United States. The bond market, the US bond market, is 4 times bigger than the assets held in US banks. So what that means? It means that one of the major instruments of financing the economy in China are banks. And thereafter, and this is why maybe there is quite a large shadow banking. We estimate that shadow banking represents between 20 to 35%. We don't know exactly. It's difficult to have, fair statistics of the country's GDP. It can be a threat to particularly allowing more Chinese to have access to finance. And we at the Asian Development Bank are pushing for more inclusive finance. People tend to say, oh, the shadow banking sector is so huge that it's going to derail the overall financing of the economy.
Some Western media outlets have even spoken about a debt bomb in China. Do you agree with that? Or are you saying that that debt bomb doesn't exist?
Well, it depends how do you evaluate a debt bomb. We have to recognize that the economy has grown partly on credit. We have to recognize that there may be more to do to monitor better, to control better the credit growth. That is fair, and the Chinese authorities have recognized that. Talking about the bomb debt is a typical media type of statement.
It's us journalists going too far, in your opinion. Now, there is a lot of focus as well in China on the quality of growth rather than the quantity of growth. At least that is the message from the Chinese government, that they're trying to focus from now on quality of growth rather than quantity. What does that mean specifically?
China has been very competitive for low-value products, and they want to shift to higher value type of activities, products and services. So quality means, in particular, quality of jobs. That requires some specific effort in terms of education. And the Chinese government have been very clear in targeting more education. As a matter of fact, it's already improving. You look at the statistics.
I was going to say, China at the moment, though, is spending less money on education than a lot of Western countries are doing. If you look at the spending on education in terms of ratio of GDP, China is actually spending less than a lot of Western countries.
That's fair, but on the other hand, education is maybe less expensive in China. More and more people are educated. People spend more time in education. You look at the statistics or number of years you spend at school, it has doubled between now and where it was about 20 years ago. So clearly there is a positive trend.
I just want to change tack a little bit, and I want to talk about Asia's other emerging giant, and that is India and the Indian economy. Now, the Indian economy for a few years now is seen to have been underperforming other economies around Asia. Do you think that there is an opportunity for India looking ahead to speed up growth once again and get out of that funk, if you will?
Well, there is clearly, we do say in our own outlook that India has underperformed compared to its potential. India's growth for this year is estimated to be around 4.9%, and we estimate the potential to be 6%. There is an infrastructure gap in India, and there is clear need to increase investment in key infrastructure and what we call with friendly type of projects which can attract foreign direct investment. So this is one key element to allow greater growth in India. The second is, from more a macro standpoint, you need more stability. We've seen and we've observed a lot of volatility, particularly on the currency market, but we've seen also that the level of public deficit has derailed in a way. The level of inflation is higher than what is expected. So there's a lot to do in terms of introducing maybe more sound financial policies in the system. The third challenge of India is that they need more productive jobs, more quality jobs, better paid jobs. A bit in a way like China, although lagging by a few years behind.
India is obviously in the spotlight now as we're seeing an election there. It's currently underway, the biggest election in human history. Basically, more than 800 million people are supposed to be heading to the polls. Whoever the next Indian government is, or whoever the next Indian Prime Minister is, what should he or she be doing in order to realize India's potential then? What's your number one priority?
My number one priority would be a sound macroeconomic environment.
And that is basically reining in spending of the Indian government?
Yes. That would be the number one. The infrastructure needs is also an area where the Indian government should push. But they have already started. I mean, it would be unfair to say that there'll be a major shift because there is a new government. The current government has already started doing a lot in the infrastructure space, and we, the Asian Bank, are extremely active in financing infrastructure projects in India, particularly in the green climate space. We are very active in financing solar energy type of projects, just to give an example.
We're going to have to wrap it up there because we have run out of time. Thank you very much indeed, Thierry de Longmare, for speaking to us here at France 24. And with that, we're also going to be wrapping up this edition of the Business Interview. Thanks for watching France 24.